Good morning. This is the BLAINESWORLD webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and get more information and listen to previous shows on our website, which is behind me, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we talk about different things and cool things that are happening in Asheville and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Jordan Doty, who's the owner of Asheville Free Walking Tours, for being my guest today. Welcome aboard, Jody. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, and what you can do, you can wave to all your friends and friends who are watching this. Okay, and that is Jordan Doty. And the question, Jody, I always ask the first time I speak to somebody is, in terms of as a child, you grew up where?
I grew up in the Charlotte area.
Okay,
Mhm.
and did you know as a girl growing up in the Charlotte area, young woman, did you know you always wanted to head your own company that was going to conduct tours in Nashville?
I did not know they would specifically be in Asheville. I have been a bit of a business person since I was a small child. Started with selling pumpkin seeds to my neighbors when I was about 6.
Okay,
So
you remember that, right? Well,
I do.
I don't see behind you though. I don't see a framed picture of a dollar bill, the very first dollar you ever got, for
I
selling pumpkin
don't.
seeds. Okay, but that's
Mhm.
cool. So you started at age 6. You remember that. What other business ventures did you get involved in as a kid?
I wrote small, short stories. I sold soda and candy out of my locker in high school. Um, I had my own little pet sitting company, all kinds of things as a youngster.
So you were always kind of like a budding entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Did you get that from family, friends, relatives, anybody in particular?
Not really. There's no one else in my family who has necessarily been as into it. So it's kind of started with me, I suppose.
Did they encourage you as a kid?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
Very. Mhm.
So you still have, I guess, in the basement there probably about 5,000 packages of the seeds,
Maybe.
If we still have them that didn't get sold. That's very cool. So you then did that, you went to school. What did you study in school?
International business and Spanish. So I have
Okay,
2 degrees, and then I have a master's in international relations.
cool. So when you were studying, were you then forming the idea for starting a business, or how do you come up with this idea to start Asheville Walking Tours?
So actually, I was studying abroad in Spain, finishing my second degree, and the one of the big things in Europe and a lot of the cities is the tip-based walking tour. A lot of red umbrella, yellow umbrella. If you look at any of those big cities, you're going to see the umbrellas all over the place. And I lived in Alicante, Spain, which was a Ryanair hub, and so I could take flights for 10 to 20 euros. So that's what I would do on weekends is I would head out of Spain and go to some really cool city and take a free or tip-based walking tour. And that's how I got to know the city. And I thought, you know, I could do this. Like maybe I should do this. And so I moved back to Asheville and found out there wasn't anything quite like it. So I started it up.
And when did you start it up?
October of 2019.
Okay, which is interesting. So you started up, I'm trying to remember the exact times and dates, but I guess before COVID hit, and then you're right in the middle of COVID.
Right before. Yeah, it was unfortunate timing for sure.
Well, it is, but I guess even during COVID, were you able to keep the business going at all?
Yeah, so we actually, one of my little marketing campaigns I did was like the only thing left to do in Asheville right now, um, because we did a lot of the outdoor parts of the tour. We didn't go in. A lot of the tours do have tastings and things. During that part, we obviously didn't go inside, but they started outdoor, everybody masked up and spread out, and it kind of just evolved throughout. But yeah, we obviously shut down for a time, but we did get to kind of come back earlier than most.
Because that was cool. I think I told you off the air that I recall I'd be walking around and I'd see a whole bunch of people in masks, like you said, with a tour guide who I knew and said, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Taking people on a tour." And how can you be
Yep.
doing that in the middle of COVID? But you were able to. So
Yeah.
talk about the process, and it's kind of interesting. Some people may not be familiar with it. The idea that you can actually run a business and not charge people for the tour itself, but it's tip-based. What does that exactly mean?
Yeah, so what I believe is that oftentimes people think they kind of underrate a walking tour. They don't know that they're willing to pay an amount for a walking tour because they're like, oh, I can walk, I can see it, it's fine. But then they come on the walking tour and they realize that they got a lot of great information, a lot of tips and recommendations for what to do while they're there, even some free tastings or entry into some special unique spot. And turns out that they're willing to pay more than they even would have on an actual, like a ticketed price. So we just kind of give people the option. We say, pay whatever you think it's worth in the end. And people tend to be pretty generous, actually, because you make connections, you make connections with your guides and with other people in the group. And so it turns out to be a great experience. And then people are pretty generous.
Well, nice thing too, they even get exercise in your tour doing so, But I guess what's so great about Asheville, and I'll ask you to kind of talk about the route, is it's kind of it's a great city for walking, and you can do it on, like, the walking tour, typically it's how long?
About 2 hours.
Okay. And so where exactly do you go in the 2 hours?
So there's 5 different tours. So the downtown area, we obviously, we stay primarily downtown. It's Pack Square, up Biltmore Avenue through Patton Avenue, and then end over in the Battery Park area. And then we do one in the River Arts District. So that we kind of go down Depot Street and then down Riverside Drive. So do the big U. And then West Asheville, obviously, Haywood, just straight down Haywood. And then we also have a ghost tour that goes through Riverside Cemetery, which that's a lot of fun. And then David, who is one of my original guides that started with me way back when, he actually has his own tour, a music history tour that does the music history of Asheville downtown. And so that's kind of a tour that I co-created with him, but it really is his thing because he is one of the music men of Asheville. He's been here for 60 plus years from here and has been in the music industry. And so he created a music tour that people do.
And on that tour, what happens or takes place?
That's so he just kind of walks from place to place all over downtown and tells people like, hey, this is where so and so started their career, or this artist played here, this artist is from here. He takes to the different, Taharas, to Orange Peel, to the big names of where music history was made right here in Little Asheville.
Is he a musician also?
He is, yeah, but he worked more in like recording studios and things like that.
And to quit the shout out of David, his last name is
Henley.
Penley. Okay, so interesting. So you have a choice of different kinds of tours, and so typically they're all in the 2 hour range.
Yes.
Okay, and how healthy do you have to be to go on these tours?
So really, it's a very leisurely pace. So most people find that they can do it. Of course, it is about a mile on the downtown. And then our longest tour we have one called the Long Tour of the River Arts District. That is about 3 miles. But even the River Arts District, we also have a short tour that is 1.5 miles. So it's not going to be too strenuous. And like I said, it's a lot of stops. So you walk a little bit, you stop and you listen, and then you walk a little more.
Are any folks in wheelchairs participate in them, or can they?
Yeah, absolutely. And all of the tours.
Because one of the bad things about Asheville, it's not as handicap accessible as it should be, I think. It's funny. Are you familiar with Leadership Asheville? You've heard of it? And have you ever done it, by the way?
I have not, but I would be interested.
They're still, I think, applications are closed, but they're still taking them. I did a program on that years ago, but the point to me saying that is that years ago I did a study on handicapped accessibility in Asheville, and it's not as good as it should be. And the worst thing, especially something that you and I take as basic, but as you're walking along, a lot of streets don't, and they're supposed to have cutouts, for making it easy for people to get up and down. and we take it for granted. But if you're in a wheelchair, it's tough. So
Yeah.
anyway, keep that back in mind. Leadership Asheville, you love it, make a lot
Yeah.
of good contacts. But the tours, is any one of the ones you mentioned, is any one the most popular tour?
The downtown. Yeah.
Okay.
The downtown is the flagship. It's the one that operates the most often. It operates twice a day, every day. So pretty consistent there. And then the others are going to be a little bit more infrequent, but still pretty often as well. So
I didn't realize that you're doing these tours twice a day. That's pretty active. How do people find out about the tours?
I would say primarily through, online. We're on Airbnb and TripAdvisor and my website, Google. But we also are in the chamber, at the airport, hotels, at the concierge work well with us. And then really word of mouth. I have a lot of return guests, which is really cool because, Asheville is often the kind of city where people will go for a weekend and then they kind of come back. And I've had quite a few people who have done my first tour and then came back the next time and did another one. And even a few who have done all of them. So it's pretty cool.
What's the website?
AVLfreewalkingtours.com.
Okay, which is really cool. I mean, the concept of a free tour, you can't beat that price when you think about that.
Yeah.
And because again,
Satisfaction guaranteed.
is it is it really? So if you don't like it, you get your money back. That's a great line to use. So part of the marketing, the idea of then being tip based. So the folks who work for you, I think you mentioned off there, you have what, like 5 people, 7 people working for you.
Mm-hmm.
So can they do they do okay in terms of like the tours? How many people in the tours, each one?
Yeah, so we have a minimum of only two,
Right.
but and then no max. So no, we have a maximum of people. Sorry, not they do have a max of we cap it at about 20 to 25,
Okay.
kind of depending on if a group is all together or something like that. And they do very well. Obviously, this kind of job is not going to be one that I'm going to make this much every day or every month. But it's on the days that it goes well, usually it goes really well. But I will say that this is very much, it is a part-time gig for most of my employees, aside from some of them who are like retired, and then this is kind of what they do to supplement their retirement or something else to do for fun, because you can't really do a 40-hour work week as a tour guide. It just doesn't work. People are not capable of staying on and just animated and excited for 8 hours straight. I've done it before and it's actually terrible. So this is something that yeah, you do on the side.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
the other factor too, I guess, for not being a full-time gig is that you also don't do it in really bad weather, But
Right.
so I assume though, but even in rain or shine, you do working tours sometimes in the rain?
Yep.
Yeah. Have you ever done that?
Oh yes, many times, many
Okay.
many times. It's a lot of times people, when they're booking their holidays, they have this hours for this kind of set, and so they want to go, and we're kind of the all right, if you want to do it, we're willing. And it's funny because I think the most adverse weather conditions make for the best stories. That's one of my friends, Elizabeth Underwood, always says. And I do think it's true. I think, people get out there and they're listening to these stories and they're kind of making friends and laughing with each other about how the wind is howling and the rain is pouring, but we're learning about Elizabeth Blackwell. So
How do you guides learn about Asheville? In other words, everybody kind of knows a little bit about Asheville, but there's a lot more than a little bit to learn.
yeah, so I do a training, about a week-long process of training the guides, but it's really funny. Most of the guides who apply and who want to be a part of it, they already have a bit of a love of Asheville, and they even kind of come in with like, did you know this about Asheville? And then a lot of them lately my newer guides, Trace Walker, she said that once she got a hold of like the training and the script, that she went on rabbit holes for days, just learning more and more and more about the really cool history that we have here.
Well, I guess too, even you, do you find yourself every so often learning something new you didn't know about Asheville?
Always,
Well,
always, always.
let me put you on the spot. So what would you say is one of the unusual or different factoids about Asheville that people don't know?
So I think the one that's on my mind, I suppose, more recently is the mystery of the Carillon. I don't know if you've heard about that.
No.
So in the City Hall building, there at the top of the City Hall building, there was this instrument that was debated whether or not it was carillon or chime. So carillon being, it's a system of bells connected together, and evidently to be a carillon, you have to have 20 plus bells. Anyway, this was a part of the original construction of the City Hall, and it used to be played all the time. Well, then it just stopped. It stopped being played. And then they did this plan to refurbish it, but then nobody ever heard it playing. And so there was a lot of conspiracy talk about what was happening with the carillon. And as of late, they have repaired it, and now it's playing again downtown. So we now have our revived carillon and or chimes, depending on depending on whether or not you would consider it a carillon or not. But so that's what's happening in our City Hall building. And then side note about that, which is an Art Deco style building, and Asheville actually has the second most Art Deco per capita in the nation, which is really cool for such a small city. Now per capita, right? Because we're baby, but we have a lot of Art Deco considering our size.
So back to the chimes, the are they come out on a regular basis in Asheville?
They are now. They weren't. They didn't for years. I mean, it was actually a part of the tour of like, what's happening with the carillon? Why doesn't it ever ring? And then all of my guides started messaging and saying, "Hey guys, are you hearing like the carillon's playing? What's going on?" And then rabbit holes were gone down, and they figured it out. They figured out what was happening, that it's being revived and it's being played. So
You mentioned that it's something certainly I know about. Do you have one of the fun things, I guess, in running this business is coming across kind of fun stories or unusual stories. What's the most unusual tour story you have? Or you probably have a bunch of them, but kind of your favorite tour story. Do you have a favorite?
It's hard to say. I've got two that are just like kind of very different. One of them, I think, so when I tell people that they're coming on this tour, I give them a little overview of what's happening. And I always tell them, you never know what's going to happen in Asheville. People joke, keep Asheville weird, and we do it well. And just, I always make some reference to that. And once I was right in front of like the Asheville Art Museum, and I was naming that. I was saying something along those lines of like, you just really never know in Asheville. And as I said that and kind of put my hands up, Santa drove by on a tractor down Biltmore Avenue. And it was just so perfect because it was almost as if I had planned it. And people cheered. They literally cheered as Santa drove by on a tractor. Mind you, it was July. So if Santa had gone by in December, maybe not as funny.
No big deal.
It's July, and we're not sure. And another favorite would be kind of early on in the tour business. I had a group of people, and it was 3 different groups that really made good friends, like on the tour. They didn't know each other before, and they hung out, and we ended at a brewery, and so they started hanging out. And it turns out that they became like best friends and actually travel together still to this day. So that was about 5 years ago. And sometimes they would send me pictures or things to say like, "Hey, your tour really brought us together, and we're traveling the world." So, which is really cool.
Okay, let me ask you this in terms of if somebody's listening and would like to be a tour guide. I'll ask you 2 questions actually. Number one, What makes it, in your opinion, what makes a good tour guide?
So primarily, really, it is just being able to interact with people, enjoying interacting with people, bringing them together, and then sharing with them what you love about the city. I always tell my guides, like, the worst thing in a tour guide is a robot. Nobody wants a robot. We've all been on a tour with a robot guide. And when you stay monotone and you recite a script and your face and your voice do not change, no one's excited about that. So I think just being able to really engage with people is a major part. And, the ability to remember facts and details and information obviously is pretty helpful as well.
As you said, kind of engaging with people. I guess some people are kind of good at that, but some people, I guess, if you don't enjoy this, maybe this is not the job for you, would you say? How does somebody become a tour guide then? So they're listening to the show. Are you, even though you have 7 folks, and we'll ask you to name them in a second, are you always looking for other tour guides?
Yeah, because, with having 5 upcoming, possibly 6 tours operating, and a lot of them operating simultaneously, we also offer private tours. So there can be days where we have up to 10 tours operating in one day. Having more guides is always going to be helpful. Obviously, there's a good balance with that, because I want all of my tour guides to also have enough tours to make it worth their while, so that they're still getting as many tours as they like in a week or in a month. But because this is everyone's other job, or there's a lot going on, we have a lot of actors or artists, or it does kind of ebb and flow. There are more there's months or even I've had a guide that left for a year and came back because they had to study abroad. So we're always looking, because especially if you find the right kind of person, if you find a good guide, we'll make it work. We'll make it happen. And the way to do that is to just contact me.
Okay, via the website, or contact you there
website
as well?
Or my email, which is also avlfreewalkingtours@gmail.com.
Okay. And if you can, give a shout out to the guides you have. You mentioned, I think you have 7 guides. You mentioned a couple of them. Who are your guides again, if you would?
So David Penley, who's one that we mentioned earlier. Mike Yao, who is also an actor. He's a great actor. So I see him in a show. Caroline Coop, Sarah Ray, Tara Cook, Trace Walker, Judy Johnson, and Leah McCurley. And Caroline is a little bit in and out. She actually has her own company that she's really working hard on right now, but she makes a guest appearance every now and then as well.
And so if somebody wants to join, like you said, just check the website, contact you. And you mentioned also private tours. Who would go for a private tour? What does a private tour entail?
Yeah, so a private tour is if you have a group that you really just want it to be your crew. You're definitely welcome to book a private tour. Those are prepaid private tours, so they're not tip based. You would pay those in advance. Or someone who really, like, the schedule that we have doesn't work, so they want something a little bit later in the day or something like that, then they can book a private tour. And we even will do customizable tours. Those are something that they would need to work more specifically with me. I've had guests who really wanted to learn about the desserts of Asheville, so I kind of created something for that. Or once I actually got on a bus with the Lewis Foundation. So there's a lot of women named Louise, Louise, and they needed a guide who showed them around Asheville. And so we're pretty flexible. We can create a lot of things because obviously I know the city pretty well. And so if someone needs something more specific, we can make that work too.
You said you know the city well. You didn't grow up in Asheville, though. When did you come to Asheville?
I didn't. I grew up in the Charlotte area, and I used to come visit often. I would say that I visited multiple times every year. And then after college, there was actually a year or two where I was visiting almost every weekend. So everyone kind of decided that if I was going to do that, I might as well just go ahead and live here. So I moved here officially in 2017.
So not too far in advance of starting the business, I guess. It took a couple of years to discover it. And what do you see in the future? So you've done this now for a bunch of years in Asheville. Do you see it expanding? Do you see it going to Charlotte? Do you see it going to Brevard? Or what do you see it happening?
Yeah. So I'm not really sure that I want to go to other cities as much as I want to kind of diversify what all we do in Asheville. I want to kind of build a few more custom tours. A lot of things that I've also offered my guides, kind of like with David, is those who kind of stay around and show a lot of interest. If they have something that's really important to them, to help create or formulate their own tour. I've heard one of my guides said she'd be interested in maybe doing an architect tour. I've heard like a hot sauce tour, all different kinds of things like that. So maybe just kind of diversifying that, and really building on what I already have rather than trying to expand into some other cities, primarily because I just really love it here.
And if I give you, can I give you an idea as well on the air? I can see also you doing a performing arts tour, in terms of not only not only Mike Out, but not only the theaters you have in Asheville, but there's also dance, there's also, other things there are 5 or 6 different places, especially that I think people will be interested. And with your contacts to have them go behind the scenes, I think that'd really be a fascinating tour. So play with that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, in your spare time. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'd like to thank you for being my guest on this edition of Blaine's World podcast. If I can ask you one more time, Jordan, to give the contact information is the best way to reach you.
Yeah, so we're on Facebook and Instagram, same thing, Asheville Free Walking Tours. And then Gmail is avlfreewalkingtours@gmail.com. And then our website is avlfreewalkingtours.com.
And a great way to learn about Asheville, but also to even get some exercise and God forbid, you might even have some fun too, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for being my guest on this edition of Blaine's World webcast. I'd also like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti, and we'll hopefully see you in person sometime in the near future. You be well.
You too.